know, a beautiful way to clap on Shabbat and not clap is to go like this. So tonight, when we're enjoying the music of our incredible klezmer band, our volunteer klezmer band, these are members of our community, part of Temple Sholom. I look at some of these faces, I can see their kids in my eyes. So it's really wonderful for them to be here with us tonight and to bring back, I agree, and to bring back the spirit of Jewish music and intertwine it with sacred music tonight. I think that we should find a little joy in it. So every time the klezmer's going tonight, I want you to clap and go crazy, pretend you're at a gospel church, and let your spirits fly. It's led tonight by Alex from, you'll recognize this, Maxwell Street Band. Yay! That's your one clap you're allowed. But you can do this tonight. So Shabbat Shalom. Yep. Thank you guys so much. In a moment after he starts speaking, then we're just going to cut him off at some point, like at the Oscars.
Halfway through a sentence. Just choose anyone. No. We're really thinking about what it means to have such a full space, both of incredible love and community and of joy. You know, this word klezmer, it reminds us back to the times of Torah, when we got really detailed instructions given to Moses about how the Mishkan, the tabernacle, was going to be built. It included words called clay.
That's my fault.
Included words about clay kodesh. Clay means vessels, and kodesh, of course, is holy. So these holy vessels, these holy instruments, like the ark, like all the tools that they use in holy ritual, like the menorah. And then we follow this word clay through history, and clay goes into this word of klezmer. You see, klezmer is a combination of two Hebrew words, clay and zemer. Clay is the vessel, and zemer is a melody. So it's referred to these musical instruments that we've been using since ancient times. But, of course, it was later that we had this klezmer revival, and it really got connected to this beautiful kind of soulful, spiritual music. And so each of us tonight on this Shabbat, we bring ourselves as clay kodesh, as holy vessels who perform holy work in the world, and we do it with a certain zemer, a certain clay zemer, a beautiful, holy melody that each of us carries that we're going to all celebrate together tonight. So as we're getting ready to light the Shabbat candles and bring in the holiness of Shabbat, we'll get up with it with our klezmer. We're going to turn and bringing all that joy and excitement to page 120 as we light the Shabbat candles, bringing in the light of Shabbat.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kirishanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat.
And from there, mostly because she
I'm doing it
is
from
stuck
here.
in there, I don't know. We rise for Kiddush on page 123.
Sorry, I'm standing in front of you. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kirishanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu v'shabbat kodsho v'ahava uvratzon hinchilanu zikaron l'maseh v'reshit ki hu yom techila l'mikroi kodesh zecher l'tziat Mitzrayim kimanu bacharta v'otanu kidashta mikol hamim v'shabbat kodshecha be'ahava uvratzon hinchaltanu Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh HaShabbat.
Amen.
Amen. L'chaim, grateful Klez.
We may be seated. As we open up to page 138,
Sorry.
we find the words of Lecha Dodi, welcoming not just all of the joy and love and melody we have here, but also being really intentional about welcoming in Shabbat. We do verses 1, 2, 5, and 9, and on that 9th verse we rise as we face the entrance, as we welcome in Shabbat.
Lecha Dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nekavela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nekavela. Shamor v'zachor v'dibor echad ki yishmianu el hamyuchad Adonai echad u'shmo echad l'shem u'tiferet v'litila lecha Dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nekavela lecha Dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nekavela likrat Shabbat lechu v'nelcha ki makor habracha merosh mikedem lesucha sof ma'aseh v'machashava tchila lecha Dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nekavela lecha Dodi b'nei Shabbat nekavela hitoreri ki ba'orech u'mi uri shir daveri kavod Adonai alayech nigla lecha Dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat עטרת בלה, גם בשמחה ובתולה, תוך אמונה על סגולה, בואי חלה, לך דודי לקראת כלה, בני שבת נקבלה, לך דודי לקראת כלה, בני שבת נקבלה.
We remain standing as we turn to page 146. Baruch Adonai, Hamnevorach, Leolam Vaed. Lai, 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 lai. Standing for our 6-word memoir, our Shema statement on page 152. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. We may be seated as we turn the page for the Ve'ahavta. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha u'b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol meodecha v'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavcha hayom al levavecha V'shinantam levanecha, v'dibarta bam, v'shivtecha b'beitecha, uv'lachtecha v'aderech, uv'shochbecha uv'kumecha, uv'shartam leot al yadecha, v'hayu letotafot b'neinecha, uv'chtavtam al mezuzot beitecha uv'isharecha, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם. On the bottom of page 157, let's pray together responsively in the English. I'll begin. In a world torn by violence and pain, a world far from wholeness and peace, give us the courage to say, Adonai, there is one God in heaven and earth together. The high heavens declare your glory. May earth reveal your justice and love. From bondage in Egypt we were delivered. At Sinai we bound ourselves to your way. Inspired by prophets and instructed by sages, time and again we overcame oppressive forces. Though our failings are many and our faults are great, it has been our glory to bear witness to our God, keeping alive in dark ages your vision of a world redeemed. Let us continue to work for the day when the nations will be one and at peace. Then shall we rejoice as Israel did, singing on the shores of the sea.
I was excited to do
I
it.
know.
Mi kamocha ba'eli Adonai, mi kamocha neder b'kodesh. Nora tehilot osef elem, Nora tehilot osef elem. Malchutecha ra'u banecha molkei hayam, lifnei Moshe u'Miriam. Zelianu ve'amru Adonai imloch, Adonai imloch le'olam va'ed. Lai, 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 lai,
As we turn to page 100, actually, no, it is not me. I'm not up yet. We're back to our klezmer, to our grateful klez, for what I see here as Freitag. I love this amount of energy. As I am in deep need of it. Some sleep, I think, for me as a.
Klezmer is like the caffeine for Judaism.
Yes, very much so. And how perfect it is that it helps us to have that energy as we go into the Amidah, our standing prayer, our central prayer, the Shmona Esrei, as is also known, this long prayer about where we've been, where we're going, and who we are. We rise on page 164 and continue on the even pages.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei avotenu v'imotenu Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, האל הגדול, הגיבור והנורא, אל עליון, גומל חסדים טובים, וקונה הכל, וזוכר חסדי אבות ואימהות, ומביא גאולה לבני בניהם, למען שמו באהבה, מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן. ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם בעזרת שרה. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, בחיי הכל אתה רב להושיע. משיב הרוח ומוריד הגשם, מכלכל חיים בחסד, מחיי הכל ברחמים רבים. צומח נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו פלישני עפר. מי כמוך בגבורות, ומידו מלך, מלך ממית ומחיה, ומצמיח ישועה, ונאמן אתה לחיות הכל. ברוך אתה אדוני, מחיי הכל. אתה קדוש ושמך קדוש, וקדושים בכל יום יהללוך סלה. ברוך אתה אדוני, האל הקדוש.
Let's pray together in the English at the top of page 173 as we prepare for our silent prayer. Together, may these hours of rest and renewal open our hearts to joy and our minds to truth. May all who struggle find rest on this day. May all who suffer find solace. May all who hurt find healing on this day. May all who despair find purpose. May all who hunger find fulfillment on this day. And may this day fulfill its promise. Baruch atah Adonai, Mikadesh HaShabbat. Take a moment of silent prayer and meditation, each of us in our own way. And when you feel ready, you may be seated. my favorite parts of klezmer music is that it is not a meaning of putting them all together to play exactly on the same note, but I am not a musician by any means, but it is so many different sounds coming together to make a really big and full sound here. And I'm really thinking about what it takes for all of us to bring our full selves to make for full sounds like this. When we are not feeling great, when we are ill, whether it is that physical illness, exhaustion, that spiritual illness, mental illness, we can't be our full selves, and how much more difficult is it to be part of a whole group or a band in this case? And our Misha Berach prayer really helps us to remember those of our friends, our family, our loved ones who are in need of that blessing of healing because they are not feeling a part of a big whole like that, but rather they're feeling a bit of a hole in themselves. And so we think about those who are in need of us, in need of our blessings, in need of our prayers, our phone calls, our hugs, and our meals to be brought over. If there are those who you are thinking of in need of those blessings of healing, I invite you to share their name aloud with the community. We pray for their healing of refuah shlema, a full and complete healing, with the words of Misha Berach on page 371. Yes.
Misha Berach Avoteinu Mokor HaBracha Leimotenu. May the source of strength who blessed the ones before us help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Misha Berach Imotenu Mokor HaBracha Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit. Let us say,
Amen.
Well, Shabbat Shalom. So I just want to say to the klezmer band, to the Grateful Klez, how grateful we are for you. Thank you. And I want to say to this family over here, how amazing it is to see you here tonight. I just have to tell you that I used to see you coming into Intelligentsia with your mom early mornings, and then they kept being the more and more, and I just have to say this. It's amazing to see you here. I love that your mom has a person like you to be able to, when she comes back into the seats, to be able to hold her hand like that. And they'll also say that I'm going to be talking about something that at points might be a little bit scary and unsettling. And if you want to leave here and kind of go out to the hallway, that's totally fine. Feel free to do that. And I also have to say that as I'm speaking about this stuff, know that also your parents are extraordinary, and they're going to be helpful for all of us to be able to see how we get our way to a better place and to our world to a better place. So I'm going to start tonight by actually by sharing a teaching that's not necessarily in my sermon, but it definitely informs everything that I'm speaking about tonight. And I don't know if you've heard this teaching by the Baal Shem Tov, but he says that when there's something, some ugliness that you see happening in another person out in the world, when you see their behavior that is abhorrent or ugly, use that as an opportunity to look to see that ugliness in yourself. To see, even if it's not as extreme, to see where those seeds are in yourself, and then see that opportunity, that as an opportunity to actually lift yourself out of those kinds of things that might actually keep you from being the person you're meant to be. So 2 weeks ago, we entered into the month of Adar, and we know from the Talmud that when Adar enters, we are supposed to be joyful. We say, Misha nichnas Adar, when Adar enters, marbim b'simcha, we are to increase in our joy. And so it is that we sing this song sometimes in settings like in our religious school, and we all get very festive and we sing this song. And then we get to this Shabbat 2 weeks later, and this is Shabbat Zachor, where we remember one of the darkest, most traumatic moments of our people's history, at least as recorded in the Torah, because Shabbat Zachor is that Shabbat that immediately precedes Purim, and we are then to read this special part from Deuteronomy chapter 25, in which we remember this piece. Remember what Amalek did to you on your journey after you left Egypt, how undeterred by the fear of God, Amalek surprised you on the march when you were famished and weary, leaving slavery, and then Amalek cut down all the stragglers in your rear. And therefore, when Adonai, your God, grants you safety from all your enemies around you in the land that Adonai, your God, is giving you as a hereditary portion, you shall blot out the memory of Amalek from under heaven. Do not forget. Do not forget to blot out the memory of Amalek. Do not forget. Now, Deuteronomy 25, this little part that we read on Shabbat Zachor, the Shabbat of remembrance, describes the attack on the weakest by Amalek. That's what's being recounted. And there's a tradition from the Talmud that Haman, the antagonist of the Purim story, well, Haman was a descendant of Amalek. Let's forget for a moment that most scholars say that Purim and the Scroll of Esther, as it's recounted, is actually not historical, but okay. So we have this lineage then that's recounted from Amalek to Haman, the antagonist in the Purim story. And so we're to read about this attack by Amalek, and then to be remembering that even in the diaspora, even in this story from Purim, that there's this notion that we could be attacked in that kind of a way, and yet we would be helped to persevere through God and through our community. So in some ways, when we hear about Shabbat Zachor, when we hear this, we're reminded of one of the great traumas that befell our people. And this traumatic experience compounded the trauma that the Israelites were emerging from, that trauma of being held in slavery for 400 years. And science has shown us that trauma can be genetically passed down through generations. I don't know if you also saw the study in 2015 of Holocaust survivors and their children and grandchildren. But what they saw is that survivors who had gone either through the concentration camps or had witnessed terrible violence or torture or had to hide from it, well, they saw that they noticed some genes and then saw those same genes when they analyzed their children and sometimes their grandchildren. And those genes were known to have increased likelihood of stress disorders and other kinds of disorders compared with the results of those Jewish families who lived outside of Europe during the war. So this led the researchers to conclude that the gene changes in the children and sometimes these grandchildren's could be attributed to the Holocaust exposure in the parents. So that's the science of trauma, that sometimes it's passed down genetically. And we also know the social science of trauma, that hurt people hurt people. And that's the purpose then that Rabbi Samson Raphael Hirsch tells us, that that's why we read this portion about Amalek in Deuteronomy 25 when we get to Shabbat Zachor, when we get to the Sabbath of Remembrance. He says that we are warned, remember what Amalek did to you, and see to it that we ourselves should not become an Amalek ourselves, not to commit deeds of wrong and violence within our personal lives. Do not forget this obligation to wipe out Amalek, in case there comes a time when you will want to be like Amalek. Wipe that inclination out. And like him, if you were going to deny your moral obligation and not to know God, but only to seek opportunities to exploit your power to harm others, blot that out. That's what Rabbi Hirsch teaches us. That's why we are commanded to remember, to not forget, to blot that out. Which makes the timing of this past week's horrors in Huwara, a small town in the West Bank, that much more poignant and repugnant. This past Sunday evening, hours after the murder of two brothers, Hallel and Yaniv, ages 22 and 20, by a Palestinian terrorist on a thoroughfare through Huwara, hundreds of rioters, some of them armed with guns, armed with knives, rampaged through Huwara and set buildings aflame and terrorized citizens. And this led to IDF Central Command Major General Yehuda Fuchs to tell local news reporters what happened in Huwara was a pogrom carried out by lawbreakers. He said, "We were not ready for a pogrom on the scale of dozens of people with flammable material and the means to set it on fire, heading to 20 or more places, as well as confronting soldiers and commanders and police at the junction, and setting random Palestinian homes and cars on fire. Who would do this? In case you want to be like Amalek." And then horror upon horror, Samaria Regional Council Deputy Head David Ben-Sion tweeted, "Here in Huwara, the blood of our children has been spilled on the street. These were Samaria residents who were killed here less than an hour ago." He's referring to the two Israelis. "The town of Huwara has to be erased today." That's what he wrote in a tweet. The town of Huwara has to be erased today. And the head of the religious Zionist party, member of the Knesset Bezalel Smotrich, the finance minister who is also a minister in the defense ministry in charge of civilian affairs in the West Bank, well, he clicked like on that tweet. And when asked how he could possibly do this, he said he was against civilians conducting such retaliatory attacks and believed that the military should have done it instead. He said, "I think the village of Huvara needs to be wiped out, and I think the state of Israel should do it." So let me repeat the warning by Rabbi Samson Raphael Hirsch. Remember what Amalek did to you, and see to it that we ourselves should not become the Amalek within ourselves. And I say this and invite us to internalize this message tonight when we look over there. And I want to point out how Smotrich got his name. His family hails from Smotrich, Ukraine, in the Khmelnytsky region, a region that in the middle of the 17th century witnessed widespread murder of Jews, and where the Jewish elders at the Council of Vilna banned merrymaking by a decree in 1661 as a result of that. Don't be so loud. Don't make so much noise. Don't be merry, because our enemies might get us. And in the town of Smotrich itself, in July of 1919, the Cossacks carried out a pogrom against the Jews of Smotrich. A horrible pogrom. Trauma. Hurt people. Hurt people. We are warned. Remember what Amalek did to you, and see to it that we ourselves should not become Amalek, not commit deeds of wrong and violence. Do not forget this obligation to wipe Amalek out, in case there comes a time when you will want to be like Amalek. Blot that out. And so, on this Shabbat Zachor, we're commanded to call this out, to make sure that we are calling on the government of Israel not to empower vigilantes. And we're calling out not for that government to in any way empower those who would become Amalek. And we call ourselves in, no matter our anger and disgust and shame. We look toward Israel, and we look to those who are doing things not only to hold their government accountable, but things that have nothing to do with the government, where they are making change. Just recently, rabbis went to Israel, and I asked one of my friends to tell me some of the things that he saw there that was giving him hope. And he said in Sadiana of Galilee, there's a fair trade collective of Palestinian and Israeli women who make and sell olive oil, and they are coming together to make change, one small venture at a time. And hand in hand is a network of 6 primary schools and high schools that educate Palestinian Muslim and Christian Israelis and Jewish Israelis together. And when he visited them in Jerusalem, they sang and they shared about their dedicated faculty. When we were there this summer in Israel, we saw some of these ventures at work with building together. There are ways in which people are trying to make change. He continued and said, on the Seam in Jerusalem, I visited an amazing collective of artists who call themselves Mikudeshet and run a community center there, and music, like Apu and the Apostles, an Armenian Christian Palestinian from the Old City, working on interfaith and intercultural dialogue. And the former dean of our college, Michael Marmer, taught about the possibilities of decency in today's world. Muhammad S. Dajani Duadi taught about how extremist Islam is misinterpreting the Quran. And then he said there was a lot more, including hundreds of thousands out in the street trying to influence the government, members of the Knesset from outside the coalition who are fighting for reform and LGBTQ rights and against the restructuring of the court. The feeling of standing in the press of the crowd in Tel Aviv on Motzei Shabbat at the end of Shabbat shouting, "Demokratia," leaves a palpable impression that the majority in Israel is pushing for good, and unfortunately a small minority is holding them back. And so here we are on this Shabbat Zachor in the month of Adar, the month in which we are commanded to find joy. And Rabbi Jonathan Sachs had a term for this kind of joy in the month of Adar. He called it therapeutic joy. Therapeutic joy is the type that's mined through the darkness, where we don't turn away from the darkness, but we mine it for the good that we can find within it. We acknowledge the ugliness that we see without turning away, and then we find within it places of hope, openings of light, places in which to sow the seeds for a different tomorrow. So I pray that the psalmist got it right. Those who sow in tears shall reap with songs of joy. And though we go along weeping, we carry a seed bag, seeds of strength and hope and perseverance and tenacity. And we look and we look and we don't stop sowing. And sow from those seeds in Havara, in Jerusalem, in Chicago, and throughout the world. Please God, with our help and yours, may they soon sprout joy.
Those who sow in tears will reap in joy, will reap in joy. Those who sow in tears will reap in joy. Those who sow in tears will reap in joy, will reap in joy. Those who sow in tears will reap in joy.
Thank you so much to our incredible musicians who are with us every week. Wow, do you bring us joy? And again, to the grateful Klez, thank you. And thank you for that great teaching about the clay and the zemer. That's just beautiful and perfect and correct. When I looked at Alex, there was a point where Alex was playing in the service, and I looked at Rabbi Gelman and I said, if only I had one thing that I was that talented in. So thank you so much for leading us with such joy. Thank you. We've got some announcements.
We have some incredible moments of being together, of studying, and so first this Saturday and then Sunday are this Saturday are Mindful Jewish Aging. It's a group, community exploring the spiritual gifts of life after 50, joining Mixed Presence online and in person tomorrow at 1 p.m. And then jump into Sunday morning at 10:45, online only. We get to study with an incredible scholar, Rabbi Mike Moskowitz, leading a teaching on clothing and gender, especially in the time of Purim, as Purim is the story about a shift from living with a hidden identity to coming out as one true self. How does clothing and concealing or expressing gender identity fit into, especially the Purim story? A great session sponsored by Or Hadash.
Who we'll be praying with very soon at 7:45.
That's right. And this has been a great build-up to our celebration of Purim, so I am grateful for that. And so this Sunday, March 5th, at 11:30 a.m., and I believe that at 11:30 is actually for sensitive children and people that like need a little space. There'll be a half hour where they can go in first to the carnival.
The
and
cancer wishes she could only go to that part.
And then at 12 o'clock, everyone will flood in, and I will run for my life. And that can also be purchased. The tickets for that can still happen on Sunday. And then...
Oh, wait. Let me just
What?
ask. What was the best night of your life so far?
Well, I think it's going to be on Monday.
What about you? Did you have a best night of your life?
I haven't slept well in many nights, so I don't even remember last
Joy.
week.
Yeah.
Well, I just would say that one of the best nights of my life was when I got married. Another great moment was, having my children. But that's nothing in comparison with what we're going to experience on Monday night at 6:30.
I know.
Are you going to be at the banquet, the Purim banquet? I hope so. At Reza's.
That's right.
It's going to be the best night of your life, David. And if anybody has not yet signed up, what are you waiting for? It's going to be the best night of your life. Rabbi Singer has promised this. And so there's going to be a huge Persian feast. We're going to have a little Megillah reading. We're going to have a lot of fun. And you just don't even know all the ways in which it will be then the best night of your life. We'll tell you about it. Some of us, we'll all talk to other people about it, make them jealous if they didn't get there.
Make sure you use the phrasing, the best night of your life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like a speakeasy that you just need that to get in. Talking about Rabbi Singer and all the great work that she has put into Monday, on Wednesday, she begins a couple of sessions of our Wednesday morning study group at 10:30 a.m. And her topic this time is classic Jewish folk tales and short stories. Should be fun.
And then we're going to keep everyone hard at work because Thursday, March 9th at 7 p.m. online, we have a historic moment. It should not be missed because we're going to be able to be in conversation with Rabbi Sally Prezan, the first woman ordained as a rabbi in North America. Wow. I did not get the reaction I thought I was going to get. I thought everybody was going to be like, oh my gosh. So thank you now for acquiescing. At 7 o'clock on Thursday night, March 9th, and then on this, a week from tonight, we're going to be featuring women of Temple Sholom at our service. And we're going to be finding some wonderful readings about women in clergy. And I think we're also going to have a little special conversation featuring one of our favorite women clergy at Temple Sholom, Cantor Ben David.
We are? Okay. Yeah. I'm always ready for conversation.
And you don't want to miss the Oneg after with babka from Masa Madre, and champagne and mocktails. You can hardly wait.
And that's just 1 week of things.
Yes. So, and speaking of the oneg, tonight our oneg is going to be in Lakeshore Lobby, or if you're joining us from your home, it's going to be at your house. Enjoy it. We'll continue now with our service on the bottom of page 586. Please rise.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו
And on this Shabbat Zachor, we happen to hear in our regular Torah portion for this week about stones of remembrance, Even Zikaron. We learn about them and what the priests, the Kohanim, wore on their shoulders when they were ever in the service of the holy. And I'll say this about these stones of remembrance. They had on them, on one side, 6 of the 12 tribes, and on the other side, the other 6 of the 12 tribes. And so they always knew and remembered why it was that they were serving other people and God in a way in which made their worlds better. And I think that these stones of remembrance don't just have to do with our tribes in a big sense, but our tribes in a smaller sense. I know that for so many of you who are here tonight to observe a yahrzeit, you are carrying on your shoulders the remembrance of beautiful family members, people whose memory continues to guide you, and then in ways, in their memory, you continue to guide all of us. And so tonight, as we remember them, we give thanks for their memory and for their inspiration. Tonight, we think of those who recently passed from this earth. We remember them: Jerry Weinstein, Adrian A.D.G. Rosenberg, Barbara Dearborn Greenwood, Warren Brand, and Ethan Vinograd. We also remember those whose yahrzeit we mark on this Shabbat: Rosalind Altbach, Karen Goodman Battis, Jan Berlin, Dr. Arthur Berman, Renard Berman, Paula Bernstein, Arnold Briskman, Vincent Edwin Chambers, Thomas Clark, Simon Krasko, David Cups, Rosalind Dalek, Hy Diamond, Aaron Delinsky, Pamela Forbes, Arlene Ginsberg, Arlene Ginsberg, Patricia Glazer, Lee Greenwald, Ruth Gutman, Cynthia Hartman, Jack Hertz, Tressa Schwartz Jacobson, Donald Kaplan, Leonard Levin, Herbert S. Manning, Sylvia Mashkis, Melissa Maber, Rhoda Miner, Marlene B. Necklace, Gary Nelkin, Adela Opry, Jerome Reich, Jimmy Reichitzer, Al Ruchberg, Harold Rudich, Francine Schaefer, Henry Michael Schaefer, J.A. Scheinkop, Richard Skoke, Thelma Spill, Theodore Stillman, Marjorie Sticks, Sanford Stoll, Bessie Ullman, William Walton, and Florence Kales Weiss. There are others you're remembering on this Shabbat. I invite you to share their name. Kadishia Tome is on page 598.
Yitgadal v'yitkadash Shmeraba, v'alma divrach chidute v'yamlich malchute, v'chayachon v'yomechon v'chaye l'chol Beit Yisrael, v'agalav v'zman kariv v'imru.
Amen.
Yehi Shmeraba mevorach le'olam u'lamei almaya, Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitba'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemed kudusha, Leila min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbachata v'nechamata, ta'amiran v'yalma v'imru.
Amen.
Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru.
Amen.
Oseh shalom mimromav, v'yaseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru.
Amen.
Oseh shalom mimromav, v'yaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imru yimru. Amen. You could be seated for a moment. Oh, you took your wig off. I was going to tell you, Alex, dear Alex, who's been doing this with our Klezmer volunteer band for years. I don't know if any of you remember Tom Hanks in The Money Pit, but right, and Shelley Long I think was in it, and the conductor in that movie has wild blonde long hair, and the whole time I was watching you from behind, you made me think of that. But now you're going classic, which I appreciate. We're going to close tonight with another klezmer piece. Then what we're going to do is they're going to continue playing another song, and at that time, some of you can start to go grab a bite, and we'll keep the doors open, and you can hear the music. Some of you can hang here and crowd around like a mosh pit and bum rush the band over here. And then at 7:45, we'll be in the Beit Midrash for our LGBTQ or Hadash service. So by 7:45, but until then, play your hearts out. Thank you.